Everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Algorithm, the podcast. And today, following on from the amazing Isaac Pattis, we have Simon Balderson. And yes, I did pronounce his name correctly this time. Simon, welcome to the podcast and tell us
Thanks for
all
having
about
me.
yourself.
Thank you. I'm Simon. I'm Director of Innovation at Wishford Education, which is a group of independent schools sort of spread across the south of England. And my role really is to think about the future of education, and specifically right now, obviously, the major topic there is AI and the impact that that's having on jobs and skills and learning and assessment and education and all of those things. So I'm very lucky. I get sort of free rein to think creatively about all of those things and try and sort of think about how that will affect our group and the wider education sector.
Oh my gosh. Now, I came to the conference and I was so lucky to speak on your panel. Please, let's get started by just telling us all about the conference, the inspiration behind it, and what is the future for it?
Yeah, thank you. So the conference was AIxEI, and the EI is emotional intelligence, and really the whole focus of that was as AI starts to automate content delivery and assessment and feedback and some of those areas that we've traditionally sort of maintained as human teacher focused things, as they begin to be automated in some way. What is the role of emotional intelligence, and what does the future of education look like generally? So it was really lovely to have a really broad set of speakers from everything from sort of creative industries, from the technical side of things, from education, and thank you very much for being part of the panel.
Oh my gosh, no, it was my absolute pleasure. And what's the future? Because I know that you're about to do the second issue of your journal in autumn, and it's so good to see, these kind of new journals coming up that are allowing people that may well not have the opportunity to contribute to the big name journals to present what they're doing, and it's valid.
So the Wishford Journal of Innovation in Education was something that we launched alongside the conference, and we were really lucky to have some sponsorship and to be able to print some
Amazing.
printed versions for the delegates there, which
Mhm.
was lovely. But you're absolutely right. It's to just give staff at a whole range of different schools, not just within the group, the opportunity to write about, their research, their engagement with, whatever ideas they have about the future of education. And it was lovely to have a really broad set of articles on slightly different topics. On the topic of, for the first edition, I think the title was The Future, Fear or Flourishing. So should we be really worried about, AI and the impact of that on education, or are we looking at some form of enabling human flourishing in some way, and perhaps it's going to be a really positive thing, and that's the optimistic view. And we're really lucky that on the back of that, quite a lot of people have said, "Oh, I'd like to write an article as well." So yes, we're having a second edition of that, which we're looking to publish in about October this year. So that's been lovely. It's a really positive start.
Amazing, amazing. Now, I've got something to tell you. The fact is, you blew my mind and you inspired me all at the same time because you started talking about vibe coding and then you were just like saying about and we did this and we done that and then Isaac came up and I was just sat there thinking, I thought I was ahead of the game. It turns out I'm somewhere in the middle or at the back. And so I've started vibe coding and you're
Amazing.
right, it's not easy. But it's it's incredible, and I'd advise anybody have a
Mm.
go. So,
Oh,
Simon,
definitely.
tell me this. What is the future of software development? Where are we going?
Yeah, I think we're at an amazing turning point in
Mm,
many ways about education as a whole, but especially when it comes to software and the tools that we have at our disposal. And vibe coding has never been easier. I've been I have a bit of a background in computer science and software development, and I've spent months and years banging my head against a desk trying to get a particular bit of code to work, and I've sort of misplaced a semicolon. And anybody that's tried to grapple with that sort of stuff will recognize the frustration that comes with trying to acquire the skill of software development. But now AI tools are exceptionally good at that and are getting better all the time. And I think we're at a great sort of inflection point where we can anybody really with the clarity of thought about what they want can
mm,
create a tool that does precisely that. The skill now is in the thinking rather than in the ability to write in Python or JavaScript or whatever language you want to use. So I think we're in there's an amazing opportunity here for anyone in the sector to create resources or tools or apps that
Yeah.
are really tailored to precisely what they need, with amazing ease, really. Um, Compared to how tricky it's been in the past. So there's a whole range of tools that I've been working on, everything from a sort of personal AI assistant for every pupil and member of staff in the group, through to just sort of standard web-based apps, some sort of flashcard apps, various other bits and pieces, some business stuff in the back end as well. But I think rather than a lot of schools are in the current position of paying very large amounts of money and
Yes.
regular subscriptions to all sorts of different software companies,
Mm.
because essentially they can gatekeep the skill that was used to create that particular app.
Yes.
Whereas now I think we've got an opportunity to break out of that, to free up the cash from those regular subscriptions, and actually to generate tools which are completely tailored to the precise needs of the individual school or teacher or whoever it
Mm.
might be. So, well, congratulations on starting your vibe coding journey. That's that's very exciting.
Well, the assisted climb is something that we're working on, and I'm looking to get your feedback. So more to come on that.
Yeah.
But Isaac and I were talking yesterday about that, and we were talking about accessibility, we were talking about cost, and we were talking about security, and how what we have now is this ability to be able to create. So speaking of creation. What are the skills that you think that we need to have now in this new age? Well, not so new age anymore of AI.
Well, I think it is precisely that ability to think creatively, and
Mm,
particularly to articulate your ideas
yeah.
really precisely in a way that AI will then be able to enact for you in
Mm,
whatever way you need it to. So that ability to link ideas, to come up with something that is interesting, that you can then articulate quite precisely.
yes.
These are the skills that we need now, rather than the ability to understand where a semicolon should go on a particular line for a particular programming language. The creativity, the idea is now the
Mm,
most valuable thing, as it should be. And so really, I think that's quite reassuring for those of us that really value a sort of liberal arts education, of the value of literature and music and art and
mm,
creativity and all of those sorts of things, feeding those sort of creative ideas that will then lead to amazing new interesting things. The actual creation of those things, the writing of the code, can be automated away for us now, but the skill really comes in the initial creativity and the ability to imagine what that will look like in the future.
yeah, definitely. And I think before AI, if there ever was a time before AI, um, we used to talk about students needing critical thinking skills, creativity skills. They need to be able to justify, they need to be able to evaluate. And I think what AI has done is it's really brought that into a very sharp focus. And
Absolutely, yeah.
now we can actually really see what those skills are about. Now, if you could give one skill to your students, and I know this is a hard one, what would it be?
That's really tricky. I think
All
it
right,
is
top
it is
three.
yeah, yeah. It is those sort of critical thinking
Mm,
skills. But I think I've always sort of, in the various schools I've worked in, I've always led like the debating society and
yes.
or philosophical discussion groups and those sorts of things. My background is in philosophy and computer science. And I really think it is that ability to think deeply, to
Mm,
to collaborate, to communicate, and absolutely AI has brought those into sharp relief. So it was exactly that was really the focus of the conference.
yes.
These sort of emotional intelligence, creativity, the ability to work in teams, are becoming even more valuable than they already have been. There is likely, I think, to be a huge shift in the job market. And so
Yeah.
those things that we previously valued in financial terms, the ability to work in detail on a spreadsheet or to write code, will perhaps be less valued because the key skills, the really critical things, are exactly that: the ability to disagree well, to think through problems creatively and how you might solve them.
Mm.
So that's quite a broad answer, I know, but it is. I think
True
the
though.
focus of education has always been about those sort of broader skills, and AI is sort of accelerating that even further.
Well, speaking of skills, that segues us nicely into a hot potato of a topic, assessment. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, when we look at kind of what knowledge, what skills, where are you in terms of your capacity and capabilities? Assessment has always been that sort of Damocles that has always kind of been up there. So what's the future of assessment then, Simon?
Again, I think it's ripe for huge disruptions. So, all of us now can generate a 5,000 word essay on pretty much any topic if we want,
Yeah.
and with no cognitive load or involvement at all.
Mm-mm.
So it's essentially homework in particular, I think, is dead as a medium of judging whether a pupil understands a topic or not. Anything where we haven't really seen the pupil grappling with an idea and trying to understand something is essentially invalid now. It could easily be that AI has been
Yeah.
involved to one degree or another in producing whatever they hand in. So really, I think and I suppose it's linked to some of those other points we were talking about earlier. I think Viva style assessment is really valuable. And already we have qualifications like the EPQ and the HPQ and other
Yes.
variants, which require a bit of that sort of standing up in front of your peers, talking about the research you've done, demonstrating your understanding of a topic. I think that is a really valid and really useful way, particularly for this brave new world
Yeah.
where AI automates everything, of actually demonstrating your knowledge and understanding of a topic and being able to articulate what it is that you've been looking into and the understanding that you've got. So that seems like a lovely future for assessment, but the logistics of how we do that is
I was going to
incredibly
say, has
difficult.
anybody
I mean,
told the exam boards?
yeah. Well, I think exam boards move incredibly slowly. It takes years just to produce, a specification on a particular subject.
Yes,
And
of
I'd say
course.
the computer science GCSE, for example, is a great example of that, just moving far more slowly than the real world is moving. My son is right in the middle of his GCSEs at the moment, so churning through a lot of revision for computer science and all sorts of other things. And it's slow to move, it's slow to update and to reflect the changes in technology and AI and all of those things. So I suspect that the future of assessment is more Viva style.
Yeah.
But then how we do that, the logistics of taking however many children there are in a particular year group and having them all stand up and talk about their understanding across 9 or 10 subjects or however many GCSEs they're taking is incredibly hard to handle. So I think it's for all of us as a sector to think really carefully about how do we adapt our assessment and our feedback and what we're how we're managing lessons to cope with this, the fact that we can no longer use going away and working on something and then coming back again as a valid way of assessing a
Yeah.
pupil's understanding of the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where kind of the assisted climb that we use with students to help them with or without AI ensure that they're still in a cognitive struggle sits well
Mm,
with what we do with teachers. And what we do with teachers is called make thinking visible. And so we've really kind of started to enjoy the teaching and learning process again by creating tasks and assessments that celebrate and make transparent the process of learning and
mm,
accept and understand that tools, human or AI or traditional, have mediated learning for a long time. So it's not about whether you do or don't use it, it's about the process
yeah,
and how that becomes transparent. And I think actually, we don't necessarily have to wait for the exam boards that, as you said, can quite rightly take their time. We can actually start making changes in our classroom right now. And I've seen a lot of
absolutely.
teachers that I've worked with, make these shifts, and students now are developing metacognitive skills, higher order
Mm.
thinking skills, and generally just enjoying it more.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity there for, and again with some vibe coding for teachers to create really interesting like interactive resources in
Yeah.
the classroom, and structure their lessons in a really engaging, interesting way, which makes full use of AI and also, as you say, makes it enjoyable, interactive. Requires pupils to really engage in some cognitive struggle to get this. So there are huge opportunities. I think it's quite easy to be really negative about the impacts of AI. But
Yeah,
actually, I think not only are there huge
of
opportunities,
course.
but this is a skill that all pupils will have to engage with. And I think, actually what we end up with is, the importance of judgment and critical thinking and, a sort of proper use of AI, which they will inevitably go on to need to use in their future careers and lives.
Yeah, AI meta literacy is the future. And I think with assessment, what we'll see is a lot more of it coming back to the teachers, because
Mm.
ultimately, if we're making thinking visible and we're celebrating and recognizing the process of learning, assessment can't be something that happens at the end. It can't be summative. It's got to be throughout. And throughout,
Yeah,
the only person that's there with them on that assisted climb is the teacher. Therefore,
absolutely.
I see this as a way of ensuring that AI does not replace teaching, but actually brings us back to the traditional route of where we should have always been in the first place.
Yeah, it's that critical role of the teacher actually knowing the pupils in front
Mm,
of them and
yes.
engaging with them in precisely the way that they need. Again, that emotional intelligence aspect, I think, will only increase as AI is able to automate so many other things in the background.
Oh my gosh. Simon, we could talk forever because I think you're incredible. I've been so lucky over the last couple of days to have spoke to some amazing people. Now, I end the podcast in the same way every single time, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you give us
Great.
three things, three tips, three ideas, whatever it is to our audience out there who are new to vibe coding or AI or whatever it is, three tips just to get them moving?
Yeah, I think you can do this with free tools to start with. If you just want to dip your toe in the water, I would say perhaps if you're a science teacher, it is really easy to go to ChatGPT or Claude or your favorite
Mhm.
AI tool and say, please produce a single HTML page of an interactive demonstration of osmosis, for example.
Hmm.
Different tools do this better or worse than others, but essentially it will produce for you a completely self-contained, interactive little tool demonstrating the principles behind whether it's osmosis or Brownian motion or any sort of topic that you want to demonstrate, and you can immediately have an interesting, engaging, interactive tool with just 3 or 4 sentences worth of description. So absolutely, go and do that. I think you'll be amazed with the results.
Amazing. Number two.
Well, if you want to get a little bit more into that sort of thing, there are lots of tools. I really like Cursor as a tool because you're able to choose different models and produce some mini apps and things. It's a subscription model like all of them are. But for a relatively small amount of cash, you can get going straight away with if you've got an idea for an app or something that is going to be really interesting, you can sort of dive right in and have a go. And I think the most important thing is to have a really clear idea in your mind of, what is the use case? How are people going to use this? And what do you want them to get out of it?
Yeah.
And if you can sort of articulate those thoughts really clearly, whatever tool it is that you use, it will do a really good job of producing something along those lines.
Amazing. And if I dare give number three myself, get on LinkedIn. People on
Yeah.
LinkedIn are literally alive with so many resources, tips, techniques, tools. It is the place.
Absolutely. And I think what I'd really like to do with, I sort of showed at the conference sort of 4 or 5 different things I've been working on. I'm intending to make some of those open source and sort of share them with everyone because I think that's what we ought to be doing as a community of schools across the country, across the world. If there are so many of us working on these little projects, why don't
Mm,
we make them free and open source and say, look,
yes.
this is where I've got to. If you'd like to contribute, let's collaborate and just sort of provide something that's of benefit for the whole sector.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, Simon, unfortunately, we're at the end of the podcast, but Thank you so much for everything that you're doing right now.
Thanks
Wishford
for having me.
are very forward thinking and very open to collaboration, outside of their own entity. And you yourself, are very much out there trailblazing. So thank you. We're going to put all your details in the bio below. And just thanks for being here.
Well, thanks very much indeed. It's been great to chat.
Amazing. So let's say goodbye to our audience then, Simon. Bye, everybody.